Lord. All right.
Okay, so, hi. So for the inciting incident of this movie, there's like two options that we have that we could talk about. So the first option is going to be if like the inciting incident is when they mug the girl, or when like the first alien comes down and like Moses gets like his face scratched and they like discover the alien. So why don't we all like, kind of share our opinions on which one of those options you think is the best for inciting incident?
I think when the alien comes down, because like it's when the protagonist comes in contact with like what will be the conflict, and I feel like him getting scratched in the face, like that starts sort of like the whole conflict with the aliens.
Yes.
Yeah,
That's smart.
absolutely. And that definitely also, it starts off because he does kill the alien, and that is the inciting incident for everything that follows, because that is the female alien with the pheromones, and that causes Moses to sort of be chased throughout the rest of the movie. So like it is what causes the rest of the movie to happen in the way that it does.
Yeah.
I feel like
you can go.
Sorry, once he like meets the character, I feel like I agree. I feel like that's kind of when there's a shift there when and that like starts the whole rest of the movie. Like everything before that is essentially just like meeting the characters and kind of understanding them. That's what I noticed at least.
Yeah, I think the reason why I kind of thought mugging, I agree with you guys that the alien is the inciting incident, but I think the reason why I originally was like, oh, the mugging is because like if they weren't there to like mug the girl, then they wouldn't have been there for the alien coming down. So I think maybe that was like the cause of them being there, but definitely the inciting incident is the alien coming down. I think it is because they're both part of like the same kind of sequence. So I think that kind of was my confusion.
I think the mugging is part of the setup. It's an important scene to have in terms of sort of establishing the characters. So like the gang boys, you know, like first we see them mugging someone, and then later on we see that they're just like buddies who do, you know, they do mug people, but they're mostly just friends. And it
Who
sets
doesn't
up
mug
the
people on the
relationship
weekends?
between Sam and those boys. So it's like important for us to start to understand the dynamics between all those characters.
Yeah. Like I could like tell from that scene, like that girl was gonna come again. Like she wasn't just like there for no reason. Like I knew eventually like she would come back and join them, but or like something like she seemed important since like we met her first, but she wasn't the protagonist. Because I feel like, don't you feel like Moses would be the protagonist?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I saw John Boyega and I was like, yes, my protagonist. I did find it funny when they were in the police car and he's like just sitting there waiting for her to let him out, and she lets him out and he just puts her in there when they're like when the alien's on top. I found that very funny. But yes, so for plot point 1, what do you guys think would be plot point 1? I have no other better way to ask this.
When I was watching, I wrote down that plot point 1 was when all of the aliens were landing, because plot point 1 is sort of described as like there's no turning back, I think.
Yeah.
Or no, it's when they enter the new world. So when they leave the old world behind. And I thought like, at that point, like, you know, things aren't going to go back to normal. Like there's all of these extraterrestrial creatures just landing on Earth. Like you can't go back from that.
I feel like you could like once they decide to leave, and I agree that like once the aliens start landing, you can't go back. But once they start getting riled up and like leaving, that kind of starts their story rather than like the Earth's outcome. Just, you know, just an idea, but and then like they kind of they go and they see what it actually is, and as soon as they realize that like it's danger and not like something cool, like, that's kind of when the tone shifts, and that starts the rest of the movie, and like in there being afraid and chased by these creatures.
Yeah, I agree. Like I feel like what I put down was like Moses committing to a quest. So sort of like when the aliens come down, after Hi-Hat's henchman is like killed by one of them, and then I don't know like the exact scene, but I feel like it's when they all sort of like grab their weapons and like decide that they're gonna like attack these aliens, like the sort of like quest, you know.
Oh,
Yeah.
like when they're all saying, when they all like go into their flats and like say bye to their family and like run
Yeah.
out and grab those weapons.
That's actually my next point, because under Act 1, there's exposition, which is where you're meeting your characters, especially like your main character, and you're kind of just like understanding like their background a bit more. So I did have for exposition, there was 2 options that I had, again, because I am a confused being. So the first one I had is when like they're riding off after mugging the girl and killing the alien, because that's when we hear like all their names and we see their faces because they pull down the bandanas, and we kind of get a feel for their relationship together. And then the other one is when they go back to their apartments and they're like grabbing their weapons, and I do think it's very much like it shows that they're like kids and not like these like, you know, just professional muggers, because they're grabbing like baseball bats and like collector swords and just like, hey, I have these fireworks under my trundle bed and let's grab those. And so I do think those 2 options are good for exposition. So I'm wondering what you guys think.
I mean, I think that exposition is never just one scene. If it was just one scene, then no one would want to watch the movie.
Yeah.
Because there would be so much information just pushed into one scene, and nothing would really be able to happen unless you're a really good writer or it's really action-packed premise.
Those are
But
exposition.
yeah, so I think like both of those are part of exposition. Like I feel like it's sort of weaved through a lot of that first act, so we can start to, you know, figure out like like we can start to name the characters, and we figure out their personalities.
Yes.
Yeah, because like at first, like just with the mugging, you don't really know who they are, and like you just think, oh, some delinquents or something. But then you sort of like hear them talk to each other and like realize like, look at Moses says he's 15. I was like, oh, I thought you were like 18. But when they all like talk to each other and they have this like camaraderie between them, like you can see like the friendship. And so I think like both of those points, like those scenes are like exposition, and we sort of like see like more about like who they are and like their individual personalities.
Yes. Okay, so that's all I have for Act 1. If we want to go into Act 2 now.
Well, I mean, there's still like other beats. There's like the fun and games part, like the all
Oh
is
yeah, I thought we were
lost,
talking
I
about
think.
I thought we were talking about beats after. I just got confused.
Yeah, we can talk about beats after we go through like the plot point things.
Okay.
I have a few notes for those. Sorry, I didn't put them in the
Okay, so we're not going chronologically, we're going by the acts and then by the beats. We're separating those.
I was just going to do it how we talked about it in class. That made more sense for my brain.
Makes sense.
All
Fair
right,
enough.
so Act 2.
So me. Okay. So yeah, I had sort of 2 parts where I was wondering if it was Act 2. Plot point 2. I thought it could either be when, was his name Brucey?
Oh, the
really high guy who watches Animal Planet.
yeah. Well, let's just call him Brucey.
Oh, wait, Brewis?
Brewis.
It's the British accents.
It really is. I can't get any of their names straight. Okay, so when I was watching it, I thought it was either when they were all in the weed room, and he first brought up the idea of pheromones, because he's the Animal Planet guy. And he was like, what if it's pheromones? And I was like, maybe that's plot point 2. But then when Moses made his decision, plot point 2 is sort of defined as when the hero finds a solution and sort of commits to it. And that's definitely, Moses is the hero of this story. He's the protagonist, or the main protagonist. And when he's like, okay, like, here's what we're going to do, here's the plan, and we will follow through with it. That's sort of the solution, and that's when Act 2 begins.
Yeah, I would have to agree that it's probably when Moses is making his decision, just because if Moses is like the main protagonist and it's when the protagonist finds their solution, that makes sense. I think bringing up the pheromones like leads to Moses's decision. So kind of the same as like for like the mugging and then the alien coming down for Act 1. It's kind of the same setup for this part of Act 2, where you have like one event that could be it if like the other event didn't happen. You know what I mean?
And like I feel like also like I was a little confused because like I was thinking like plot point 2, like a moment when we feel like everything we know about the conflict is wrong. So I was like kind of confused about that. But then also with the pheromones, like we realized like that's why they were being chased. And so it was sort of something like different. Like we were like, oh, his jacket's glowing. And so it was sort of like realizing why they're being chased for no reason. Like there is a reason. And so I sort of like get that. Yeah.
Smart.
Yeah. Is there another? Because for Act 2, I don't think there's any other.
Oh yeah, I think we have to
points.
talk about midpoint.
The
Yes.
midpoint. Okay. Yeah. So I did think that the midpoint was when they were all in the apartment and they had to attack the aliens. That felt like very much a middle point. Like there was a lot of action in there. It was sort of in the middle bit of the movie.
Yeah.
And it felt like a good
It's like-
definition of sort of what the movie was doing in the moment. Like
Yeah,
it was
like
the
it's-
conflict.
Yeah, sorry. It's like a main point of action without it being like, while there's still like questions left over for the movie to like explore. So like as like the climax would be like, you know, everything, or well, as much as possible, and then like it's like the solution. I think the midpoint is like another high point of action without there being a full solution to the problem. So I think that does make sense for it to be the when they're in the apartment.
We also
Yeah,
lost.
and like, oh, sorry.
We also like lost a character during that, so I feel like that, like, and pretty much all the characters that we had met at that point, or most of them, like all the girls, they kind of just come together, and I feel like that heightened the action and how we feel about them in the situation too.
Yeah, like that felt like a superhero moment in a way. Like when you see everyone sort of band together. Like,
Like
and there
very
were
much Avengers vibes.
yeah, and there were a
The same
number
with
of
the
like
aliens.
superhero moments in this movie. I feel like when Sam joins up with the gang, and they like let her in, and then when the high white guy joins the gang, that also felt like
Hi, white guy.
I cannot recall his name. I keep forgetting it. Like
Brewis.
those Brewis, those all felt like really big, important moments.
And like I also feel like the moment when we sort of got to see more of like Moses like as a person and like as a character was when after Dennis was killed and they were all like really scared. He sort of like he was usually pretty like stoic, sort of like he was very like throughout the entire film, like he's strong, like he's the leader. So seeing him like shed a tear was sort of like emotional, that like single tear.
Oh yeah, the single
And
tear
so-
as he turned.
It was
think
like
that-
it was just emotional.
I think that also highlighted the fact that he is like 15, like we said. Like you were like, oh, I thought you were 18, but he's 15. Like I think it did show that like these are kids dealing with this, you know, giant problem of aliens, and like they're kids that are like dying because of it. I do think it shows like the significance of it too.
Yeah.
And I think it
and
also
then,
helps.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, I think it also helps the audience connect with Moses more. I mean, I already liked him by that point, but say if you were an audience member who didn't like Moses by that moment because you thought he was either too stoic or he was the leader but he maybe didn't care about his friends. Like in that moment, like you can see that he really does, and that it's sort of just like a facade that he has to hold up because of his environment. And like then you can actually connect with him as a person and not just as a character.
And like, what do you guys like all think about the scene when Moses? They were all like in the apartment, and he was saying like he regrets like ever like chasing the monster, and like I don't know if it was the same. No, it was a different scene. But when he was saying that, like, the cops sent the monsters to kill black boys, like, what do you think about that?
Mm.
That like broke my heart a little bit when he said, he's like, wow, like, I just feel like that was a very like, I don't know if that would like drive the conflict or what, or like drive character development, but that was very telling about the situation, I feel like.
I do think also that was like, it really hit, especially like with the time that we're in now. And then especially like for me, like I've seen a lot on social media, like John Boyega being very vocal about the Black Lives Matter movement, and to see his character express those feelings, it kind of like hit. Like I know like one point John Boyega was like, I don't care if I never work again, like the Black Lives Matter movement is like very important, I don't care if I never work in Hollywood again. So I don't know, I think it just brought like real life and this film like together, and like the issues that, you know, Black people have been facing for so long, but it's now you see it in film the same time as you're seeing it a lot in social media and like the press.
Yeah, the distrust of the police was very evident throughout this entire movie, and it was shown that they were pretty ineffective in all ways. Like, they weren't really helping with the aliens, they were just locking the block down and weren't letting anyone get out. Like, they were, in fact, likely doing more harm, because the aliens, not that they knew, but the aliens weren't going to go anywhere else. They were going to stay in that block. So by locking that part off, they're actually just causing more harm to the people who lived there, because they wouldn't be able to leave and save themselves.
Yeah.
I think they mentioned that at one point where they're like, they don't care what happens to the block, like they can lock us in and we could all die, and they'd be like, oh good, finally they're gone. Like
Right.
at one point that was like very intense. Yeah, I think that was right after the line where he said like they sent the aliens to kill black boys, just like to get like rid of all these people that are like undesirable in their community, and they knew kind of that they were the undesirable ones.
That, like, no one would really care if they died, or at least they felt that way.
Yeah.
But, like, if they did, minimal people would mourn. Like, there wouldn't be much news coverage about it. It would just be like, oh yeah, another gang dead. Another couple of black boys just killed.
Yeah.
Also,
And the feeling that it wouldn't matter.
yeah. So I felt like Sam sort of bothered me. Like, I understand where she's coming from, but like also she like did come around to them and like did understand them. But I feel like in the scene when the cops are killed, like she blames them. Like she's like, you guys sent these dogs or something to like kill them. And I didn't understand them. Like, did you see that incident? It clearly was supernatural. Like there was nothing that they did. And so like the way that she was still mad at them, like when she had like the guitar and was like gonna like kill them or something, well not kill them, but like and she was very defensive, and she was like, she still viewed them as just like a neighborhood gang. Like she didn't really see them as like what they were yet. But I feel like that bothered me, like the way she was like for so long, literally until like I don't know exactly when in the film, when she joined them, when she realized what was really happening. At first though, she was very like, she just bothered me, like the way that she judged them.
Yeah, I
I
feel
mean,
like
it made. Sorry, Elliot, you go.
oh, I feel like she represents like a normal average citizen that doesn't really get involved in political things, and like she was supposed to represent the average media viewer, and how she was clearly manipulated by like social expectations of the block to be bad. And like she even said like, I don't like the area, and the kids were like, you don't like the area, like what are you talking about, this place is awesome. But I feel like she had these expectations in the beginning, and her kind of learning by the end, she was more like in the know, and she had actually like experienced what was going on. I feel like that's supposed to represent how like a healthy transition from like the average white person that doesn't know what's going on to like someone that's more involved and understands later on with like experience and knowledge instead
Yeah.
of the news.
I do think oh, I'm sorry.
Okay. I definitely felt like like she was reasonable, I think, because it is annoying, I think, to the viewers, because after the mugging, we basically stick solely with the boys, and we learn more about them to get attached to them. But for her, she was walking down the street to get home, and a bunch of boys attacked her and tried to get like all of her possessions off of her. And yeah, like they basically only ended up taking the ring because that was the only thing of any worth that she had on her. But she was attacked, she was scared, she could have been seriously hurt. And so I think like it did get irritating at points, but I think it was important that she did stay that way so like we could really sort of work out the conflict and the tension. And if that tension didn't stay for so long, it would not be rewarding at all or feel
Yeah.
realistic.
I was gonna say the same thing. And also, like, I think if she had gotten mugged by them and then was like, as soon as like the aliens came, she's like, oh my god, let's be a team, let's band together. I'd be like, girl, you just got mugged by them. Like,
Yeah, it's like,
maybe
oh
just,
yeah,
like,
there's supernatural creatures. All is forgiven.
like,
Let's be buddies.
well, we would hope that would happen because I mean, like, on the scale of like 1 to 10 on what's the bigger issue, I would put aliens above like a mugging. But
like she doesn't want to believe there's aliens, so
yeah, I do think she's definitely like going through something mentally from being mugged, because that's not a fun experience, I'm assuming. And then to have like, you know, a bunch of aliens coming down and like trying to kill her, she's like, well, you know what, I think I'm just going to pretend the aliens don't exist and instead focus on the first issue, which was being mugged, because that one I can like mentally sort of handle. And I do think it just kind of gives her like some humanity in terms of like how she's like coping with things. Granted, like we do fall in love with like the boys and like their characters, so we're kind of like, all right, like maybe chill out. Like I think they're pretty decent kids, but then it's also like, but on her hand, she just got mugged by them, so they're not that great.
yeah. Should we move on to Act 3? Because I think we only have about 10 minutes left.
Yeah.
Oh,
We have
yeah.
exactly 10 minutes, actually.
Okay, so for Act 3, it's like the race to the finish. So basically, it's like a shorter amount of time, and it's very like fast-paced and sort of like you feel the tension. So it's like, oh, are they gonna like survive or whatever? And so for like plot point 3, like I wasn't really sure. Like, does anyone like think like they know exactly like what it would be?
I mean, I think it was pretty short. Like, it did not last long, because if plot point 2 was we're going to attack the aliens, and that's how we're going to do it, then like the race to the finish was basically just like Sam going to Moses' apartment and then Moses going in there and blowing the whole thing up, and like that was Act 3.
Yeah, so plot point 3 I think would be the setup for the climax for what I think is happening. So whatever like the climax is, plot point 3 would be like how we got to the climax, like immediately, like what caused that. So I think in that terms, thinking that what would you guys think the climax is then? Because then we can discuss plot point 3 going off of that.
I would say when Moses like basically kills all the aliens like in the apartment, that sort of like plan.
Yeah, so then whatever like caused Moses to go in and do that would be plot point 3, I think.
Yeah, because climax is the explosive moment, which is literal in this case. So yeah.
Yeah, I feel like once they figure out that it's pheromones or no, once they realize that they have to like they know how to kill them, and like after the whole pheromone speech and everything, and they're like, okay, well, this is the plan. And I feel like that either is leading up to plot point 3 or is plot point 3.
But that's 2 though.
What? Oh, okay. So
because 2 is the hero finds the solution and 3 is hero implements solution, I think.
Oh, okay. I got you.
Yeah, so the climax is Moses luring and attacking the aliens and like killing them all. Go Moses. So like what
King.
Right. So like what moment causes Moses to go in? Like within Act 3, like what is like the defining moment where he's like, yeah, I'm gonna do this, and then he does it.
Like I feel like I think because when he said he wanted to finish what he started, that was like Act 2, right? So like
Yeah.
I feel like in Act 3, maybe it's just like I don't know the exact like a specific moment because like they just sort of come to this. He just comes up with this idea basically. Like he like throws himself into the fire basically. So like
Yeah, like they don't tell us the plan because that would make it boring. Like you never like say like, oh yeah, like this is the heist, and then like, well, I mean you can if it's a heist movie, you do that. But like you rarely like you. The most satisfying thing is when the hero says this is the plan, and then they cut to them executing the plan, because then you're like on the edge of your seat, like, ooh, what are they gonna do?
Yeah.
Or you're told the plan and then it goes wrong from the get-go and you're like, what, how are they going to adapt to this? So like they wouldn't tell us the plan or else it wouldn't be as interesting.
So then maybe plot point 3 could be when Moses comes up in his own head with the plan. Like we don't verbally hear it, but like is there a moment where you can kind of see him thinking like, hey, like I'm gonna do this, and then like beforehand? Because now
Yeah.
I'm slightly confused.
yeah, I feel like there was a moment when he was like this is like we're gonna do something, and like after they find out like about the pheromones, like he just you see like a light bulb sort of go off, and I feel like he's like we just have to do this, like, and then we just do it. So
I feel like plot point 3 might be a little bit later, like thinking about it. Like if is it like another moment where like you can't go back? Because if that's the case, it could be when I forget the girl's name, the lady, when she completes like her part of the plan, and then that's right when Moses is supposed to run through the apartment and then everything explodes, and like that's like it's in slow motion because it's going so fast, like right before that.
That could be plot point 3, yeah.
Yeah, because she kind of like she like stumbles through like her part of the plan and then she finally completes it and they're like, all right, let's go.
So yeah, definitely. Plot point 3 then I think could be that moment like after she like right when she finishes her part and they're like, all right, Moses, you're up. Or it could be like a light bulb moment. I do want to say just because like
finish, so like that is like you aren't breathing, you're like, how like is this gonna work?
yeah, I think because you can visually see that on the screen, that might be a better point versus just like something you have to like interpret. I think if there is that like visual thing of like watching her finish it and then they go to Moses, I do think then that would be plot point 3.
Okay, should we talk about the beats now, because we don't have much time?
Yes.
So one of the main scenes that I was thinking of bringing up for beats is when they're driving away in the police car, and so they're driving, and then I feel like all of a sudden there's a shift in tone there. I don't know if I should just like tell you what I'm thinking or like have you guess, but
Go for it.
so the police car comes around the corner, they crash into Hi-Hat's car, and they don't know who it is yet, and then all of a sudden Hi-Hats gets out, and I was thinking that the beat there could either be or maybe both, but when they crash into the car, because at that point they're not running anymore, they're being chased but they've been stopped, or additionally when Hi-Hats gets out of the car and they realize, oh fuck, like we're about to actually die from both ends.
Well, yeah, because they know it's Hi-Hats.
The starting beat is the crash, and then it's Hi-Hats. Like when they recognize the car and they're like, "Oh, that's the big guy's car."
And Hi-Hats thinks it's the cops, and then he's like, "Wait a minute, those are some kids in there." And then it's like, "Oh, he knows it's us. Like, he's not driving away anymore." Yeah, those all could be really good beats because it's like a sequence of like boom, 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 and you're like, "Oh crap! Oh crap! Oh crap!"
Yeah, like it just keeps getting progressively worse and worse and worse.
Just more intense.
Yeah.
Like the shifting plot, like there's clearly like a direction. Once they take the van, I don't really know if there was like a direction other than being chased by the aliens. but like as soon as they hit the car, it feels like they're not being chased anymore because there's a new situation. And then you kind of get the chasing feeling again, and then they realize it's hi-hats, and that whole plot point stops. Yeah, and then I feel like another one that was pretty prominent, 'cause I feel like we should mention more than one, you know what I mean? When they're actually mugging the girl, and then I feel like one of the biggest beats in the entire movie was just when the first comet fell, because that went from a scene of mugging immediately to a scene of what the fuck was that?
Yeah,
Mhm.
supernatural. It brought like a whole new element because like mugging, there's solutions to, that we know of. Aliens, there's no like textbook like, hey, this is how you get rid of aliens. That's something to figure out on your own. So I think that is kind of an interesting beat.
I do have a question, actually. What do you guys think the B story was in this movie? Because I was looking for it, and I have a few ideas, but I don't have anything. And I'm like, this was the B story.
So,
Like the subplot of the movie.
maybe the subplot is just like, for me, I thought maybe it was just like the life they have within the block, like excluding the aliens, because you see that like, you know, when Moses was like, hey, can I put this alien in your weed room? They're like, well, then you have to start selling harder drugs for us. And like, so that means he's been selling lighter drugs. Lighter, I don't know, lesser, I don't know. So like, you know, now he's a 15-year-old, you know, drug dealer, which, you know, isn't always great. And then we see obviously that, you know, the whole like the part we were talking about where like they're like, oh, they send the aliens to kill black boys. That shows like the racism within the block, and like the relationship within the police. Like maybe the B story could just be like the, for lack of a better word, like socioeconomical like stance within the block and like the lives that these boys and their families lead.
It's
I also
like,
like.
yeah,
Sorry, you can go.
it's interesting. Sorry, yeah, I'm Lexi. You.
So I also liked like their relationship to the block, how they were very protective of it. Like when the aliens were invading, they were like, "This is like up to us. Like we're gonna protect like our neighborhood." Like I like the way that you could sort of see how that was really home to them. And even though they like mugged people and things, like they had this, like you get to see like their life and the way that it means like a lot to them. Like they're just not protecting a random city. Like it's like they
It's
feel like,
theirs.
yeah. Also, obviously, they don't want to get killed by the aliens, but I feel like we do get to see that like relationship with them to the block.
I feel like
Yeah, I actually thought the B story was when High White Guy was just like his entire thing. Because for most of the movie, he. I'm sorry. That's
so funny. Keep going.
That's his new name now.
Because he was almost never connected to the boys. Like in the beginning, he was because they were all in the weed room. But then they separated immediately afterwards, and like they didn't bond or click at all then. And then we sort of get like the B story is like a break from the main action. And for a long time, he's removed from the main action, but we still see snippets of what he's doing in and out. Like I think at one point we go back to him for literally 2 minutes, and he's just watching Animal Planet or National Geographic or whatever. And then we go back to the action.
As he should.
The intersection of them just
And
like
because the point too is defined as the A and B stories intertwine. Like that is when they're all in the weed room and the pheromones come up and Moses makes his plan. That could be it. And then I just have one. Do we want to talk about like what the denouement was for this movie and then like be done, because that's like the finishing touch?
Yeah.
I think maybe we should talk about some beats for Act 2, just because I think there are some interesting ones, but then definitely the denouement or whatever it's pronounced as, because I'm a dum-dum.
I think we're over 30 minutes now, so just.
So if we want to just get the denouement through, and then we could talk about the other things.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, when they were all chanting his name at the end.
Yeah.
Oh, I was gonna cry. I like was
That's so emotional.
I may have actually cried, but I'll talk about that.
Like it really felt like there was a send-off, like there was a very like emotional sort of like release that happened in that moment. I do think that's like denouement, because they are being arrested, but because everyone's like, oh no,
Oh,
Lexi,
got kicked off. Hold on.
but because of everything. So maybe we should just end it here.
Okay.
Yeah, but definitely like the chanting is like, you know, a big send off, and that kind of like finalizes the movie. So that definitely is like the denouement.
Yeah, because the big conflict is over. Like the other B story, Anna, that you had, what that like was like the conflict between like the boys and the cops and socioeconomic policies of the place. Like that's still ongoing, but like everyone in the neighborhood is like behind their back. Like they got each other.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
And then just
So this was a great discussion. I do think we made a lot of progress in understanding all the aspects that Professor Mannon wanted us to discuss.
Oh, I do. Will our names be displayed in the video, or should we like name
Yeah.
ourselves right now?
Let's name ourselves
go for it.
just in case. I'm Anna. Our previous friend who got kicked out was Lexi. And then
Martha Erickson.
Elliot. All right, and I'll put all our names in the email and everything too. So.
Okay.
All
okay,
right.
awesome. Thank you guys so much.
Good talk.
Bye.